It's nice to see sunlight, though, through the windows and doors. Appreciate everybody being here. Just for the record, we have council members that need to be meetings by 10, so we're looking at maybe, if we go that long, about a 9:20 stop to give time for travel time for council members, Vice Mayor. So with that, Councilmember Goforth and Adams, they're both online, virtual with us on Zoom, but all the other council members are present. I'd also like to recognize David Argue. David, raise your hand. He's with CMC Steel, and also part of the Mesa leadership team, shadowing the mayor's office today. I hope he can keep up. But welcome, David. Appreciate you coming all the way from Santan Valley. So with that, item 1A is to hear a presentation and receive an update on the facility improvement study for the convention center and amphitheater. So Andrea, your team, come forward and let's see what you got. And Councilmember Adams, you're online. You can hear us okay, and Ms. Goforth?
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Great.
Good morning, Council, Mayor. My name is Andrea Moore. I'm the Director for Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities, and we're pleased to present to you today the overview of the facility improvement study for the Convention Center and Amphitheater. We have been working on this for the better part of a year, and we're very excited to present the findings, answer questions today. You have the presentation that we're going through, and then a draft of the full report is available on your agenda item in Legistar. So with me this morning, I have Roger Singleton. He's our Deputy Director over our commercial operations in our department. Tyler Oten from CSL, the consultant that prepared the study, and Randy McGrain from the ensemble group that owns and manages the Delta Hotel. And with that, I will turn it over to Tyler to go through the presentation.
Happy to. Great to meet you all, and I met some of you briefly over some interviews as part of the kickoff of the research. Just a little background about Convention Sports and Leisure. We've been around for about 35 years, and we specialize in providing consulting services for the convention center, stadium, arena industries. And we came in to look at the convention center, the amphitheater as they stand today, both from a short-term, mid-term perspective, as well as a long-term perspective about what opportunities might be to maximize the economic impact we get from that building, to maximize its utilization by the community, and enhance its the district's identity as a quality of life asset. So the research, the recommendations we'll be talking about today was heavily research, heavily data supported. This is a quick overview of that. The full report, which I think you have a copy of it, a draft of that is about 190 pages, so plenty of information to glean over and some takeaways to look at. We're going to focus more so on the big ideas that came out of that and some of the key recommended scenarios we have for both the center and the amphitheater. But overall, we had a lot of takeaways from an analysis of 50 different theaters and convention facilities around the valley, 20 other facilities that we view as best practice facilities around the country, certainly fed into some of our recommendations. And then we wanted to include consumer input. Who's going to be using the building, and what new business could we win and attract to both the amphitheater and convention center? So we did do over 65 different interviews of event planners, conference planners, concert promoters, and learn directly from them what's their interest in Mesa, what event space, what types of event space and sizes of event space do they need to get their business here, and then what does their business look like in terms of attendance, in terms of room nights, in terms of the per day spending that their attendees generate while they're in a destination. So again, based on a lot of data, the convention analysis, we'll start with this in terms of what the key takeaways were. And when we started this project and did the site tour, our first impressions were this is an older building, being a structure built in the 70s, 80s, it has some of its size limitations. But overall, it does offer some benefits that stand out to convention planners. There is some flexibility with the space. It does offer the ability to host some things outdoors. The layout of the campus, walking from one meeting room to another, that actually stood out and was well received by planners. And overall, the recent strategies that the hotel, the convention center, and Visit Mesa have undertaken together on a memorandum of understanding of going after and targeting conventions has led to real material convention growth in recent years. Pre-pandemic, in 2019, we had about 15 of these convention conferences, and these are these high-impact events, multiple days. People are staying overnight. We had 15 of those in 2019. We had 26 in 2024, so 60, 70% increase. That market is growing for us, and the reason is there's more efforts and more coordination between those parties to get that business. But at the same time, that market share is not guaranteed. And what we're seeing in the Valley certainly is more facilities. We're seeing a crowded field of competitors that are similar size to us, and we're seeing much higher quality products maybe offered at Talking Stick Resort, offered at the JW or the Renaissance downtown. So they have the similar size space as we do, but they are definitely in better situations as far as having higher quality, more modern amenities. At the same time, we do have some limitations. Our number one with the space being a ballroom offering. So we have a main hall that's 15,000 square feet. That can be used for trade shows. But the ballroom at the hotel at about 9,700 square feet is constraining. So where events, especially high-impact conferences from medical associations, tech associations, they want a large space for food functions, and those demands are going up and up every year for food function space. We are lacking in terms of that. At the same time, our hotel is somewhat constraining with only 274 rooms and no rooms really beyond that downtown. That does limit our business a little bit. Also, what we are hearing from planners is this disconnection from downtown. Even though we're this urban center, and that's a unique part of our identity, especially versus some of these self-contained resorts we're competing with, there is that 15-minute disconnect, and there's not really a reason to make that journey from the building to downtown. First-time visitors here wouldn't know to do that. So how do we better connect to them and get them more familiar with the idea of going downtown? On top of that, lack of familiarity with event planners. 86% of surveyed planners weren't familiar with the building. They were familiar with Mesa. I mean, 99% were familiar with Mesa, but 86% were not familiar with the building, had not considered the building before, of those 65 interviewees. Now, some of them are too big for us. They have too many hotel rooms that they need, and we can't accommodate. But a majority of them we could accommodate and go after if A, they knew about us, but B, when they were guided through what the facility is like today, they did express that they thought it was dated and improvements would need to be made. Now, the opportunity to be a pioneering facility, I had that point in there because as we're coming out of COVID and as we're seeing this shift in event planners, I think it was 35% of event planners had retired or gone to different industries during COVID, coming out of COVID. We're seeing this Gen Z millennial shift into the event planning space. So there are new preferences, there's new requirements for choosing sites, and they're not just looking for the event space, the square footage to accommodate them, they're looking for experiences. They're looking for something that's truly unique, authentic every time they choose a new host site. So with Mesa Convention Center, some things that got them excited were the opportunity for developing outdoor event space here. They saw a need for new, bigger lobbies. Right now, events are using lobbies and atriums more so than ever for general sessions, for programming. They don't just want to go right into a building and go into the programmed rooms and the meeting spaces and ballrooms. They want to be able to use every square foot in the footprint as part of their events for networking sessions, for more dynamic programming. Immersive experiences. This is something we're seeing in the entertainment and sports space. With the use of LED and projection mapping lighting. Attractions like Cosm, attractions like the Sphere in Vegas are early examples of this. But with meeting planners that we're speaking with, especially from the tech industry, they are going to make use of these technologies like Delta did at their keynote at the Sphere just several months ago. Beyond that, the connection to downtown, we'll get into that in a few slides. They did give us some recommendations, and we've seen some other successful downtown convention districts implement some trend-forward placemaking investments. And then beyond that, how do we just update the interiors and refresh the meeting rooms and ballrooms? We did get some visual examples from HMC architects that we'll go through today. But we can jump into just some of the visual examples of what some of these items look like. Number one, the outdoor space. So I mentioned that we have this new force of event planners. They are looking at outdoor spaces, outdoor event patios and terraces to host not just side activities like networking sessions. They want to use these for general sessions. They want to use these for their food functions. We explicitly asked event planners about their interest in using an outdoor space in Mesa for their ballroom function. And I believe just about 75% said that they were highly interested in doing so. They want to do something different, especially considering the weather here could be supportive of it for at least for most of the year. And the concept that we have here, this outdoor patio, the idea would be it's 3 seasons, possibly with retractable doors. You'd have your high-end lighting, high-end finish. There's audio-visual capabilities here so they can host a variety of programming. And it would be more, it certainly would come with a higher cost, but it would be more than just your simple event pavilion with just a roof over it. The idea here would be this is an indoor-outdoor space, unlike anything you've really seen elsewhere in the Valley right now. Immersive experiences. As I mentioned, here's some examples of private businesses who've used this for entertainment, for admission type attractions. Wisdom in Los Angeles is an interesting example over here on the left. These are igloo structures on the outskirts of downtown Los Angeles. And it is privately owned. They rent these out to companies, to organizations for their events. So they can display different artwork on the top of those domes. They host small concerts. They host TV or show viewing sometimes in there, but they also host your cocktail parties, your end of the year award ceremonies, and other private events, driving significant revenue. And they're seeing more and more demand, especially from some of the tech companies in the area. Something that emerged during our research, we tested with some event planners, was what if we combine some of these concepts and did something really different with the event patio and combine it with this idea of immersive technology and projection mapping and LEDs. Here's an example of the Al Wasl Plaza in Dubai. This has been done, again, in a very rare instance, a very premium event, the World's Fair out there. But we're seeing this technology become more and more affordable. And I think the unique opportunity here, unlike anything we've seen in other cities around the country, is we have Arizona State and the Mix Center just down the road. And we did interview some of the decision makers there, as well as some faculty there. The interest was high in terms of being a partner on this type of effort, not necessarily paying for the capital to get some of these investments done, but certainly being a part of programming, supplying the faculty and students to consult the building and consult the city and the management group on how these could be applied, what types of equipment we should buy, and what types of content could we come up with, A, for entertainment purposes, B, for educational content for the associations that are here, and even concerts, and I'll get to that in a few slides. Beyond that, digital placemaking, the LEDs, panels of the world are becoming more and more affordable as well. These can be used as art pieces nowadays. They're not so much just for advertisements and signage and wayfinding. Convention centers, each of these are convention centers around the country, are increasingly using these as placemaking investments, showing art. They can be interactive. They can also host video chats. So now you can pull up some furniture in a lobby area and host a hybrid event much like this. This is a perfect showcase, this room in City Hall, obviously, that we've invested in technology. I was just telling them that this is probably the most streamable city council room I've seen. So how do we take that type of thinking and now apply it to the convention center? Because that's certainly been a demand we've heard from event groups. The downtown connectivity piece, Center Street, Centennial Way, the connection through Mix Center. How can we strengthen that connection and build on what Mix Center has really done and what this City Hall has done? And this is a city that seems to be increasingly built on light, on making things safer at night, on this idea of trend-forward placemaking. We're using technology in some of the public art installations we have. Let's keep that going and apply it to connecting to the convention district and the hotel. The other, we'll call it the blocking and tackling of the center in terms of how can we make this more functional for today's uses. And it was something that really stood out was this new entry concept. An expanded lobby is really the number one need we see from a physical event space perspective. 7,000 to 8,000 square feet of additional lobby space was recommended in what we've seen successful at some similar buildings around the country. This is an option, facing the hotel. At least we would add this new atrium area that would be grand, naturally lit. HMC architects prepared this just as a concept. And now you'd have this connection to the hotel, and it could be this launch point to the rest of downtown. You can see with the architecture, it would be iconic. The event space we have here, the meeting room, the ballroom, some of the natural finishes we have include, your classic flooring, the paint, the additional natural light. We have LEDs in the main hall as well to give it this more modern feel. But this would probably be the most affordable option of the recommended scenario. In terms of the amphitheater, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, thanks. Similar growth in high-value events. The concert's done really well in the last several years revenue-wise. Now, concerts, I think, in this past 2024 year did dip a little bit. Part of the reason is the concert industry saw significant growth, especially outdoor concerts coming out of COVID. There was a lot of shows that, for a good 1 to 2 years made outdoor their preferred concert layout when they were touring the country. At the same time, we saw a lot of consumers spending more money on concerts than ever because there was what we were calling pent-up demand. We are starting to see some slowing of that, some plateauing of that. But at the same time, we are in this valley and in a state where we're seeing more planned amphitheater developments. We're seeing significant investments in the Van Buren, the celebrity theaters, the financial theaters of the world. These are very modern venues that A, provide premium experiences to their artists, and B, provide premium experiences to their attendees. And those are a couple of things that are lacking just due to the age of the building. And it's really over the last 10 years where there's been significant movement in thinking of the hospitality at these facilities. But amphitheaters especially, and one I brought up a few times while I've been out here is Palm Beach. West Palm Beach, Florida has the, I think, Financial Amphitheater. They have a green room in the back of their facility that's a cocktail lounge, that has an outdoor patio, that has a pool for the artists. This is something where you're building an experience for the artists, because nowadays in the industry, everybody's on tour to make money. And word of mouth spreads pretty fast from artist to artist about the premium experience at a venue. We are seeing venues start to lose business as some of their competitors are enhancing their hospitality amenities. So we want to create a buzz among the artists who play here. At the same time, we also want to improve the experience for fans. So what does that look like? Some of the recommendations we have there it include the green room, the hospitality space. Right now we have a pretty confined backstage area behind the band shell. The rigging capacity it is an older structure, and what we're seeing with shows nowadays, even at the 5,000 capacity level, is higher and higher production needs, especially as some of these bands. We always say that these 5,000 seat venues are for the up and comers and the ones who are coming on the downside of their career. But each of them are putting in more audio visual with their shows. How do we handle their extensive rigging? So we do put in the full report a pretty extensive budget item just for a possible replacement of the roof. Other fan-oriented types investments include overhead shading, finding opportunities to provide shading to extend our season, maybe an additional month, maybe even 2 months. Shading that could maybe have misters attached to it. We do have some visuals kind of showing what that could look like. And then other investments like a beer stand, VIP seating. We do have the immersive experience technology, the projection mapping as a possible option for this, as well as making it more accessible and adding an ADA ramp on the west side of the complex. Here's some visuals showing what some of these look like. Now, I think with the amphitheater and in the full report, this is a less intensive investment than the convention center. It's not as technology oriented, but it does involve some new structures, including that talent hospitality room, again, to provide the artists with an experience. Enhancing the rigging, again, to bring in and handle the capacity of more shows. We will start to lose some shows over the next several years if we do not improve our rigging capacity. And then the fan experience, the overhead shading, the beer stand, the VIP seating, and creating immersive experiences. These are all things and opportunities to improve the likelihood that attendees are going to be coming back to shows. It's going to improve the ability for shows to pull in a high number of attendees, and obviously is a part of the business case for the amphitheater. Now, beyond that, it does just so happen that the amphitheater, the convention center plans, relate very, very well with some opportunities at the hotel. And before I get into this list, I'll say that what we heard from a lot of attendees and surveyed event planners and concert promoters was, there is still this need beyond just the building. There's still a need for an updated experience at the hotel, especially for these higher end corporate medical shows. So what they'd like to see at the buildings, they'd like to see replicated in some fashion, certainly at the hotel as well as the event space of the hotel. Randy's going to take us through a little bit about how a lot of these plan improvements at their property tie in to the building, and I'll wrap up and talk about what does that overall impact look like if we're to make all these investments for all three key pieces: the building, the amphitheater, and the hotel.
I'll pick it up. Thank you, Mayor and council members. First, I just appreciate being a part of this. It's been a very unique experience. We purchased the Delta Hotel in 2018, and pretty quickly it became clear to me that this was a very interdependent relationship. We are embedded in the middle of essentially a civic center and a convention center. We can never succeed if the convention center doesn't succeed, and we will always be a drag on the success of the convention center if we're not providing the hotel amenities that are required to attract the kind of groups we need. When we embarked, some of you around this table know I've been passionate about this for some time. And so I tried to learn from past experiences of the city looking at what they could do to the convention center. So there's been other efforts, and they seem to have strayed into very grandiose plans that stretch the imagination and the fiscal responsibility necessary to execute stuff. So we learned from that and tried to develop a scope of work that was executable, that addressed what I think is our biggest problem. We have a quantitative problem in terms of groups, but I think more importantly, we have a qualitative problem. We need to upgrade the quality of the kind of groups that are coming and booking the convention center, the amphitheater, and the hotel. So when we looked at it, we said, what are the pieces that we need to include? And I was lucky to be very involved with Tyler and his team and Andrea and Roger to try to answer those questions. So the first thing I want to address is the brand of our hotel. It is a Marriott, but it's a Delta. So most people don't know what the heck Delta is. Is this an airline or is this a hotel? So that is a problem, and it's been a problem for us. So we're in active negotiations with Marriott to approve an up brand, maybe back to a full-service Marriott, but certainly move up the brand scale for what we can do. And that addresses, again, that qualitative problem. The other things that we're working on is what I call amenity and connectivity. So, working with Andrea, we realized one of the keys, and Tyler mentioned it, was we have to approach the hotel, the convention center, the amphitheater as one complex that we market together. That starts to overcome the size issues. Now, we can't completely overcome the size issue, and the proposals that you see don't recommend a big expansion. It's a surgical improvement and adding those qualitative items that will make a material difference in the economic output. And when I say economic output, I'm not just talking about what's the convention center revenue versus its costs. I'm talking about how do we bring business, how do we bring visitors, how do we create an identity for Mesa through this portal through which our visitors come and experience Mesa. So that's been our focus in looking at this. What do we need? We need a much upgraded food and beverage experience. So when we bought this hotel, we've invested about $15 million already over and above what we paid for that hotel. And that was mainly in the area of rooms and some public space and ballroom space. We intentionally left some of our breakout space fallow to see what that next generation is. So our intent then is to, and I'll get through the next slide, to add a significant food and beverage outlet, more breakout rooms, but really start to create in the center of our hotel. And Roger, let's go to the next slide. You can see we're just in the middle of everything here, and we can go to the next one here. So, we are bound on every border by either the city or other developments. So what we felt we needed to become was that nexus that draws people in, gives them a sense of place and where to come for a convention center, as well as providing those things that are not currently developed and present in the hotel. On the next page, we can start to dig in. So here you can see some of the components. I'm gonna highlight that center area. One of the advantages we have in that hotel, which we want to take get maximum benefit from, is we're shaded. So we have a very tall building, and our gathering space is to the north of it. So our northern area, that collection area is almost always in shade. So we said that is the area where we want to draw in. If you look to the north, there's a drop-off area. When we start talking about a VIP experience for the either convention center guests or for amphitheater guests, we can draw them in, give them a unique experience, provide their own private reception in there. That same area we have designed to connect over to cul-de-sac as well. So we're trying to create a true northern boundary to what is considered downtown, so that downtown can then start to go from that northern boundary down, as well as from the Main Street area up as it has been. The area we would spend the most time, energy, and money is, it's labeled H, if you can see that. So that is currently our three-meal restaurant and some breakout space. That building would be essentially gutted and rebuilt to provide high-functioning breakout space and a world-class food and beverage outlet. I want to emphasize then the front of the hotel. So if you look at this image, which our architects dovetailed onto what HMC did, one of the unique characteristics of our hotel is it is tall. You can see it from everywhere. So we plan to rebuild our porte-cochere to make it, to tie it into the new convention center entrance. But importantly, we're going to use that height to do projection mapping on the top of that building. So one of the things I've come to embrace when I think of the city of Mesa, downtown in particular, is light. That ASU Mix Center is incredible at night, right? If anybody who's been involved in the charrettes where we've talked about what can happen in downtown, ASU is talking about reblending the Lewis pathway into the light pathway. So if we can create a beacon and an identity, we're going to draw people. We're going to create a sense of connection between downtown Mesa and this northern end. And that sense of walking is going to get shrunk. Because just like in Disneyland or big malls, if you can see where you want to go, and if you're interested in going there, you're going to go there. And we have the opportunity to create all sorts of interesting touch points along that way. So we think that's a really critical important. That's an example of our expanded porte-cochere. And the other thing about this creating between Centennial, the Lewis Pathway, we're creating this connection that could tie to the multimodality plans that the city is looking at as well. Like if we were, and I think I think you're at a perfect tipping point to really consider an autonomous electric vehicle shuttle that runs around, because you have a perfect grid system. They're at that tipping point where they're affordable and they work well. This would be a perfect drop-off point. So those people coming into downtown that don't know where to go, there's a big field of parking there, and you can connect to either walking or multimodal, so it provides that. This area is how we reimagine that central courtyard I talked about. So this area is predominantly in shade. And again, we're talking about light, bright, modern, high-tech, innovative design, which ties to ASU and the innovation district that the Mesa has embraced. And then lastly, we're embracing cul-de-sac. I've met with Ryan several times. We think we can create that connection point, so cul-de-sac doesn't feel like this car-light community that doesn't actually pedestrian connect directly as well. So we can create amenities to enhance that experience for his tenants and start to create that throughway as well. So I think we're at a tipping point right now for a transformative effort that I truly believe will make the difference. And for us in the hotel, it's really mission critical. We have invested a lot of money. The hotel is not performing. We have worked very hard. We've seen the amazing developments in downtown Mesa. Everything I imagined would happen, I've seen it happen. It's not translating to RevPAR. It's not translating to room nights and revenue. But we're not succeeding as a hotel. And we need to address that in order to continue to be a vibrant part of this downtown community. Thank you.
Yeah, and the reason why, the big why behind these projects, obviously, it would be a huge helper to the revitalization of downtown. Obviously, these are some cool ideas that would look nice, probably get some national press if you talk about some of these immersive experience concepts. But what we're trying to do is not just compete with these other venues that I mentioned, the crowded field of venues in the valley, the crowded field of venues in the state. We're trying to stand out. So these are all unique, market supported. We hear it straight from the consumers that this is the type of product they're looking for. And the idea is to be what we'll say is a small, mid-size, urban resort experience type property with Randy's types of investments in outdoor space, usable premium experiences at his property. They complement the technology forward type investments we have at the amphitheater and the convention center. We are aiming to become a high value event destination. The economic impact associated with that, this is just a quick snapshot of the 20-year net present value. So the $78.5 million in direct spending, would primarily occur downtown, but this is what we would bring in terms of new events, net new events that we couldn't win today to the area. And this is the money they would spend on hotels, shopping, restaurants, primarily in downtown. In addition to that, that spending would be retained within the economy. That it would pay for additional jobs, about $54 million in indirect induced spending. That's about $133 million in economic output. So before we dive too deep into the numbers, and there's a lot more detail in the report, that is the big why, the big reason. In addition to investing in a publicly owned asset, in addition to the transformative effects it would have on the overall atmosphere in downtown. But to close out on that, just the numbers behind it, happy to answer any questions and get into discussion.
I'm sure council has quite a few questions. I know I do. And I know all of us travel to different conventions and conferences all throughout the United States, and we've all have a varied experiences in those venues. So with that, is there anybody online? Ms. Goforth, Mr. Adams, we'll start with you first. If you have any questions.
Mayor, I may have a few here in just a few minutes, but not at the very moment.
Okay. Ms. Goforth, you want someone else to go first? All right, anybody at the dais here? Ms. Duff, I know you do.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Like I was speaking of earlier this morning when I just said hello, I looked over the entire study. I haven't read it completely. I will. I think it's fascinating. I think it's well done. I think the depth of information and breadth of the information is quite impressive on how we look at these space. And I appreciate your work on this. I'm really impressed by the study that was done. And thank you, Randy, for being here. I know this is, since during my entire tenure, we've had conversations on how we could improve this area. I appreciate the tie-in with ASU mix, especially as we look at additional schools that will be in the digital arts. Gaming is looked at maybe a possible next school, and of course AR, VR, and this being part of our world. Part of the future is going to be in this digital world, and how we learn, how we train, how businesses operate is well beyond esports and entertainment. Of course, that's a huge part of it, but this is emerging throughout our economy. And so I think that is just a great tie-in to the use of the convention center to be able to tap into these kind of conventions and gatherings virtually. You know, you could have 100,000 virtually and maybe a few thousand present, and then figuring out the revenue stream so that you, for the city, so that we have revenues from those who tap in virtually. So I think that provides that uniqueness and also brands our downtown in supporting the economic growth here in our arts and innovation district, how we're stepping into the future using arts and innovation through learning and entrepreneurship opportunities and a reach to the world through the convention center. The pathway that connects, it was on page 20, the G, the Lewis pathway, you call them the light pathway is one of the new terms for it, is a great opportunity along that pathway, which connects from the Art Center all the way up, to the west side of the library, that crosswalk, and then the west side of the library up into the convention center area and across a lot of parking lot at the convention center. As this area develops and grows, that provides spaces over those parking lots, or doing a garage and getting rid of parking for businesses, for maybe some retail, maybe living. I would like to see more on economics so we can build more employment opportunities here, and for businesses to be here to help with the economics of downtown. We have great retail businesses along our historic Main Street. That's uniquely local, but the uniqueness of here will be more in the Arts Innovation District. I appreciate the terms that you use to stand out and to be unique, and I think it ties into that. But providing those economic opportunities into the 22nd century? What century are we? We're in the 21st. Into the 20, looking forward, and building an economy around that, around our education, around our convention center, around the arts that we have in downtown Mesa. I love the amphitheater. I think it has so much tie-in and value to it. It's getting into the weeds a little bit, talking about the food variety. Right now, we have a lot of complaints about food there, whether you have food trucks or opportunities for local restaurants to have an opportunity to sell, or we even see our airports now. We want to have some local favorites, or better restaurants, more culturally diverse and interesting places, rather than just getting a hot dog on a plain bun. And I had a question on, it says, I forgot what slide it is, I'm looking at things, it says demolish the gallery. What's the gallery?
Mayor, Councilmember Duff, that's the connection hallway between buildings B and C that we only open up when the full convention center is in operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's not a place that we typically use or see. Oh, okay. I think I'm remembering that. I was thinking more of an outdoor space. Okay, all right. The Apache and Superstition ballrooms, what do we use those for? Some offices, some city office? I mean, how do we see those being used going forward? Those are the building up on the north side, the northwest side of the property, A?
Mm-hmm. Those are what we've called, they're oversized breakout spaces. I think they're around
Okay.
4,000, 5,000 square feet. They're currently being used sometimes by some events as ballrooms for food functions, but ideally they should be larger meeting rooms.
Okay.
They do get some use, not as much as the main hall. But in this new plan, the new scenario, the idea would be they're playing a very support role, in addition to maybe the new outdoor space that would kind of be a new ballroom, in addition to the hotel's ballroom, which could be a general session space, and then the main hall, which would be a trade show space. So these would be these two oversized, what we'll call junior ballrooms or large meeting rooms, which would be ideal. That's what a lot of events
All right.
like to see at a
Okay,
building.
so that's a useful space.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was just wondering if on the campus, and I haven't talked to Visit Mesa about this, if they should have some kind of presence for people who are visiting to be able to discover what amenities and things to do there are in Mesa. Anyway, just a side note on that, since it is a little bit removed from being downtown. Then my other question is on I should know this, on the very last slide, it talked about the economics and MPV, 20-year MPV. What is MPV?
Just the net present value. So just accounting
Okay.
for inflation that could be taking place. What does that look like in terms of dollars today? So
It's a 20-year stream.
correct.
So this is a cumulative figure?
Well, it's taking that figure and bringing it into today's
dollars.
dollars. Because if you just look at it in the future, it's going to be a different number. So it's
Larger
just-
number, yeah.
Yeah. He's just giving us in today's value what this is worth.
Okay, let me think about this. I'm not quite sure on that. So that's about all I have for right now.
Thank you, Ms. Spilsbury.
A note on that slide, since we actually have an MCC campus in our city, I think it could be confusing to people to see MCC campus because they might think it's Mesa Community College instead of Mesa Convention Center. So I would love that to be changed.
That's good. I didn't think about that.
Just if someone was looking at this, out of context
Yeah,
or
that's
something.
true.
Anyways, because that was my first thought when I saw that. Just a side note, but.
Sure, yeah.
I had a couple of questions. I love this, by the way. A lot of us hear a lot from the public, and we drive past the convention center every day too. So we all know it needs to be upgraded and that it could be a huge benefit to the city. And as Mayor Freeman said, we've all been to much smaller cities than ours that have really incredible convention centers it's a really enjoyable thing to go and to be at those hotels/convention centers. And then every time I'm there, I'm like, why don't we have this, right? So I think it's something that our city's ready for to bring this to a new level. So a couple of things. Back on slide 20 or 18, that map that we had up. That big, beautiful outdoor area, is that where future event space expansion square is, or is that where the future exhibit hall expansion is? Which side are we envisioning?
Future exhibit
that?
hall expansion, yeah, that's where it
Okay,
would be
so
situated
the one that's
right
on
now.
the furthest south?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it would be an option. We're not saying, that
Oh, I
that's
love
where
it.
you go, but I think it would be ideal location. And, as far as an exhibit hall expansion, just the data we saw from the event planners, your main hall can do 90 to 95% of the events.
Yeah.
So I don't see a need to expand that contiguously anytime soon. So I
Okay.
think the event patio, the connection could have the complemented place to the library. It could be certainly along that new pathway, the light pathway. It could be a bridge to that. So there's a lot of reasons why we feel really strongly about that
Putting it
footprint.
right there. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I think that could be like a really, really incredible spot right there. And then as far as I'm seeing, where the current entry is, it says improved entry experience, potential new entry, lobby addition, and then we have the new entry that would be by the Delta. Are we envisioning 2 entries then?
I think both need to be improved for sure. Both need to will undergo some moderate expansions. We initially looked at the new entry across the hotel as a really great option if we're serious about becoming a convention center, and that would be the primary place of entry for those overnight visitors. But at the same time, we recognize there's going to be plenty of drive-in visitation in the parking lots to the west. Either way, that westward entry needs to be improved upon with signage, with beautification. And maybe that's also where we choose to do a lobby expansion is on that side. Future planning would need to be done,
Okay.
but certainly both sides need to be improved.
Just, I know when there's an event there's a very usually obvious place everyone should enter. So kind of trying to figure out like what that would look like if people are parking on one side and would have to walk around to the big, beautiful new entry. And But I do love, it wasn't mentioned a ton, but that connection from the hotel over to the convention center, that's very typical of a lot of these
Yeah.
convention centers where you don't have to really go outside if you don't want to, if it's 115 degrees or something. So I liked that as well. So of course, I am going to bring up parking, big surprise. I get frustrated when there are events at the Delta Hotel because it's hard for me. It's challenging to find parking often if it's a really crowded event especially. So I think we just need to be looking at that. And obviously if it's out-of-state visitors or whatever, it's one thing, but if we're doing local stuff. How many rooms are in the hotel?
274.
Okay, and so how does that compare to other convention centers? Like, I noticed somewhere in the notes that there would maybe be shuttling to other hotels or something, but there's not a ton of hotels with this caliber around here. I think you kind of have to go more towards either Riverview or the freeway. So what are we looking at there?
Yeah. So in terms of the 274, it's great for a headquarter property. A lot of the centers we're looking at nationally have that same kind of property, but we just don't have additional downtown rooms. All these other ones, they're able to host what we call citywides, events that can take up 3 or 4 properties. I think we do some of that here, but it is a challenge because your closest other full-service hotel is 4 or 5 miles away, at least, could be a 5 to 10 minute drive, so not ideal, but it's workable. We do talk about it in the report, is somewhat of a stopgap solution of figuring out more support for those events, figuring out shuttling solutions for them. There are some destinations, Sioux Falls, South Dakota is one where they have, it's $100,000 a year a budget item. I think we have a convention support fund here, a sports support fund here. But they use that pretty liberally to bring in some events that are staying downtown, at the hotels downtown. Beyond that, we would hope that with the continued evolution of downtown, with the investment in the building, do we create demand for another property in 5 or so years? It's a big if, but if so, we would love to see some kind of autonomous shuttling, to wherever those properties might be later on down the road downtown. I think a big takeaway is, there's still plenty of business to be had with the hotel situation we have today, but it's just the dated nature of the facilities that's
We're half full.
precluding that.
So,
Half full, okay,
yeah.
okay. And I just, to echo a lot of what Councilmember Duff already said, I love going to concerts at the Mesa Amphitheater. I've done it since I was a teenager, and I mean, it's a great venue as is, but I think, elevating the experience, it would be incredible. And I also love what you're wanting to do with those pathways. I think that's really key to connecting, as has been mentioned. I like the shade idea on the amphitheater. Anyway, I think that really connecting that immersive experience with the Mix Center and the lights, and I mean, it could be really amazing. I guess my biggest question is the cost of all of this, right? So are we looking at future bonds? Are we, is this even going to be possible? We all would want it to happen, right? So I'm just wondering what our plans are.
Mr. Brady, before you answer, let's cover that at the end,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I think there's some other questions out there, and then we can, because that's one of my primary questions, what's it going to cost and how
Yeah.
we're going to get it done. So with that, Vice Mayor, do you want to lead off?
On that question, I think we pose it more broadly. What's the funding mechanism? And then we'll have that discussion, because I think this is more of a vision at this point. We haven't worked through any details yet of how we're going to do that. So I think there are multiple paths we could go. When we had our discussion, I appreciate being part of the interview process. I think my district's probably as far away from downtown as you can get, as I'm in Southeast Mesa. But the success of downtown also elevates the success of all of Mesa. That's how I see it. We discussed the importance of first looking at this business plan from a market niche. What market, if we make investments like this, what could we expect to bring in? What kind of concerts, what kind of facilities? Right now it's cat shows and knife shows. So how do we expand beyond that? What's the vision? Sell me in Southeast Mesa. Why should we make the investment in this? What are we going to get?
Yeah, I think all of these investments are designed to give you a shakeup of the event mix. And I think the value of the survey data, the 65 interviews we did, is we're able to see who's from corporate, who's from tech associations, who's from medical. And there is a lot of optimism from those high-value groups, who call them high-value sectors, of coming here. But they need not additional physical space, but a lot of these amenities, these premium technology amenities. So the idea, we have the cat shows, we have the reptile shows, that keeps our calendar busy, but there's certainly 2 years looking forward, there's certainly gaps in the calendar to bring in more conventions, and the business is out there. So these high spenders from very high affluent industries are willing to come here. If we make improvements, they're not coming to a dated building in the 70s, 80s that feels like a civic center today. They're coming
And
they want
it
to come
does.
to a
It does
convention
that.
center.
We had mentioned ASU might bring a gaming program here, but I think we would struggle to attract a gaming competition, I would think, given the size, or would we be able to get some of these?
And I've done a number of esports facility studies around the country, and there's a lot of concepts out there. But in terms of square footage and then the capabilities we're talking about adding, I think it would lend itself really well to collegiate, high school esports championships, maybe even some smaller exhibitions. I mean, esports is not an industry where there's hundreds and thousands of events that are out there everywhere, but it is a growing industry, gradually growing every single year. And with the presence you have of Arizona State and other universities in the Valley, it could be this hosting grounds for collegiate regional championship, for a conference championship, maybe even, there's always a number of national championships from these different groups in esports around the country. And they're willing to go to any facility that has the technology that can support them.
And technology is something that has been invested in this city. I mean, I think this is covered by fiber. You can see it in this building. You've mentioned it on the front end. So there's some infrastructure in place here, I think, that would support it. Some concerns I have, obviously, just the one hotel that you mentioned. Maybe it's possible that the brand you represent would be willing to look at building other facilities, niche hotels, to bring in more hotel rooms if this were to be successful. I think we have some space for that in various locations. What my suggestion is, other than the budget, is that we need to bring into more focus the conversation of what the niche is, what the business model is, what the return on investment is, what we are truly trying to accomplish here, so people have a very clear idea of, we know what it is now, but what is it we want it to be? We're not trying to be Phoenix, we're not trying to be San Diego, sorry.
Right.
But there is a market niche here to be made, and then once we do that, then I think we can have a conversation too about what we're willing to invest as a community in that.
If I could, Mayor, Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Summers, what we're trying to accomplish is doubling. That Randy mentioned leveling up the types of bookings we have. The convention center right now is full. We have many months that we have to shut down bookings because we have so many involved in there. We're trying to elevate that to a higher level of revenue per event. And to do that, this niche, the high technology niche, would double those types of conventions, trade shows, business meetings that come in above where we're currently at. So so we're completely full right now with that mix of
Bigger events, better
big
events.
mix of events, but we're trying to
concerts.
double the amount through these investments
Yeah.
of that higher end show that comes in.
Yeah, bringing people in, maybe investing more hotel space, restaurant success, those types of things. And so I'm very interested to see this as an important first step moving forward. So looking forward to more conversation about this.
Mr. Heredia.
Just going from Vice Mayor Summers' comments, just on the layout, would you, do you want to keep people in the same vicinity? I know building A on the top just feels like far from the main center of activity. That's a question I pose. A lot of things is proposed to be built out in that center area. So I'm not sure, like the A piece and the closer to university, something that maybe on the budgeting side, or on the how we pay for it, do we sell off that portion or make it a hotel, right? So the other question on the hotel is that, do we have an issue of not having enough booking at the hotel, but the issue of not having enough spaces for larger events that needs more hotel, right? Like it's like, yeah, we're missing more. It's half full, as you're saying, but is it because we just don't have enough, so that we're not getting these extra bookings on the hotel? So that's a question of. I'm not sure what the information is telling us, right? So,
Mayor and Councilman Heredia, I'll comment on that. So I've been involved in several strategic plans in my work in Visit Mason, DMA, and there's been always top of the list, new hotel, new hotel. And what I have said repeatedly is the economics do not support it. Anybody coming into this market to develop a hotel will look at the existing market. And I'm a millstone around that. So I said, if you want a new hotel, first we have to get one that forces us to get another hotel. We have got to drive revenue to that point. And my view of this whole thing, this is not the last bite at the apple here. This is the strategic next step, right? To force that next step. So we can prove up a concept with a strategic investment today, but we have ample land to continue to grow in that area. So long past the time I'm going to be actively involved in business, I could see a lot more rooms up there and an expanded convention center. But what we're trying to do is present to council an idea that can be executed and prove the concept up so that we can grow into that next phase.
Yeah, just on the previous question on just how do you keep people in a vicinity where that would be a question on like design piece. And then I think the other piece is just the niche, right? Seeing how we can be different from other aspects in the valley, right? Because those are going to be our competition and how we land in providing a different experience. I think it's key, and what that model is I think the overriding kind of piece of how this could be successful or flop, right? Like and I like the digital experience piece. I don't see that in the valley as much, right? And so that could be an opportunity for us to really amplify the chances to land, bigger, better concerts or bigger, better convention activities, right? So those are some initial thoughts there.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. Overall, I think a very, very interesting and thorough examination of the situation. To be honest with you, I have not had a chance to review all 190 pages, which I will do. But so thank you for what obviously is a well thought out, exhaustive study. Having been involved with Visit Mesa over the years, I'm well aware of the fact that we have a very outdated convention center and amphitheater as well. So no argument there. Randy, thank you for the investments you've made thus far. $15 million is a substantial sum, and I realize that the hotel still struggles to hit some financial goals. So I very much appreciate you and your group sticking with it and participating in this study. I think everything that's been presented is on target. I think this is where we need to go if we want to be competitive with other venues. I think what Randy McGrain said just a few minutes ago, I totally agree with. Anyone else who is in the hospitality business needs to do is give him a call, have a cup of coffee with him, and an honest conversation. They're going to, well, we're not building a hotel down here because the market won't support it. So I see that problem, which is why I appreciate the Delta sticking in the game as long as they have. Honestly, the real question here, well, several questions. How do we pay for it? Who pays for it? I'd love to see a funding mechanism where visitors and users pay for the greater share of it. What I would struggle with a bit is how to sell to the average Mesa resident who maybe isn't a concert goer or doesn't particularly care about conventions and meetings. How do I sell to the average Mesa taxpayer why they should pay for it, if that is the plan? And I don't know what the plan to pay for it is yet. I think the mayor mentioned we'll talk about that at a later time. So overall, I think to do nothing gets us exactly what we have, which isn't performing and isn't very saleable in the concert, convention, meeting marketplace, other than, as Councilmember Summers mentioned, knife shows and cat shows, which there's a market for. But where do we want to be? And I think one of my colleagues mentioned the 22nd century. I doubt I'll be around to see that, but I think we do have to think long term. What are we going to do with this asset? So Overall, great presentation. Look forward to the continuing conversation about how is this financed? How does the city, and more importantly, the taxpayer, benefit from it in the long run? So those are my initial comments, and after I've had a chance to thoroughly review the 190 pages, I no doubt will have more, but appreciate the work that's gone into it and look forward to further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Ms. Goforth.
Hi. Sorry about earlier. I was having some microphone issues. Thank you as well for the presentation. This is, I think, a lot of good details. I think the theme of the day is none of us have gotten through 190 pages, so I would say the same thing. I've been looking at the cost-benefit analysis a little bit as we're sitting here, but I too think something needs to be done. I'm kind of curious about the timeline and how we move forward on this. Mr. Brady, is this, or are you looking for direction today? Are we looking for a decision? What are we doing?
Mayor, want me to answer that question with everything else, or what do you want me to do?
Go ahead and answer.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to, I was just kind of
Well, I
waiting
think
here.
it flows into where we're going to end
thank
up
you.
on some of the cost
So,
analysis.
Mayor and Council, so I've had the opportunity to be engaged in convention centers, not only here, but obviously in a much larger market. Convention centers are not in and of themselves significant revenue generators by themselves, the operation, just at the convention center. So why do cities do convention centers, right? It's for everything you all talked about. It's for that experience that brought you to those communities, right? You stayed in their hotels, you went and enjoyed their downtown and their amenities, their restaurants, and spent money there. And so we're really at a pivot point with this property, right? It's showing its age. The staff is doing a great job of filling up this, the time, the calendar with events there. And so we're doing a pretty good job of filling up the space, but it's obviously not driving a lot of business into Randy's property. And so we're trying to figure out how do we elevate and kind of leverage more of the opportunity here. The challenge we have is even today, and so, when we all talk about what's the financing, what it can look like, the City of Mesa general fund today, right, already covers the shortfall in the operations of the convention center. And you don't, it's like, oh my goodness, that's every city, right? Pretty much across the country, that's the model, that's what happens. But so why do we do it? Because it brings people into our community, right, to have those experiences. And frankly, even from a city's perspective, we use that facility for a lot of different purposes of community events, state of the city. I use it quite a bit. I'll be having another large meeting there with 200 city staff members that we have regularly, and there's no other venue to do that. And so you have to kind of look beyond just exactly what's happening. And you want to maximize that, but you want to maximize it to leverage bringing in activities that fill up hotels, that go into your downtown, that create those kind of experiences. So you kind of first have to kind of get set in your mind, why are we doing this, right? It's all the things we got excited about when we saw the pictures, but from a financial standpoint, you kind of have to take your mind and go beyond the footprint of the convention center and the operation. Now, you want to do everything you can to maximize those revenues to cover those costs, but ultimately, it's like what I think the consultants are sharing with us, you want to create an experience that brings people into your downtown, into your community. So we have not taken a lot of time to figure out, well, how would this be paid? Because again, it's like the last presentation we gave a week ago, we want to make sure we have the direction of the council that you're okay with what you're seeing here and moving forward. So the next responsibility for us would be to go back and say, okay, there's a big number here. How do we break it up? How do we phase it? How do we work with Randy so it matches up? Because not only are you talking about what the city's planning on doing, but it's also Randy and his partners have to decide if they see enough commitment from the city, are they willing to make the investment in the hotel? And certainly, those are opportunities to look at. We do look at the bed tax from the hotel to help support this. but it's going to take Randy's going to have to double his rates and fill that hotel up to get that bed tax up to a point where, it has some significance. But all those things we'll put on the table, and we'll come back and discuss it. But ultimately, it would require some financing to get it done. Right now, we have to pay cash for major improvements at the hotel, or the hotel, sorry, not the hotel, the convention center. And make those go. So this is something significant. It'll take a little time for us to kind of sit down and identify all the different revenue streams that come in. But right now, again, general fund's already contributing over $500,000 a year just to maintain the operations at the convention center. And we'd like to get that to break even, but then even then, there's not like additional revenues coming off of there. So you kind of have to do the analysis like was done today. It says, yes, but outside of the convention center, all these other activities will come into the city. It's the same reason we did the Mix Center, right? City doesn't receive revenues off the Mix Center, but we hope that it brings activity and attention, which it has, into downtown. So today was to kind of get this consensus. Council likes the direction we're going here. You heard from Randy. Then give us the next steps to come back, and I think a lot of this information is kind of identified in the report about how other cities have done it and identifying a financing plan for the future. We'll be glad to do that. But we weren't coming today for that specific plan.
Got it. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
I'm just curious about the timing of this. Is it because of, and maybe it's none of these things, but are we seeing an uptick in demand for the targeted programming? Is this just on is this just the next city facility that we're looking to upgrade? Or is there something significant about the timing right now?
Well, I'll just jump in real quickly. I'd say the timing is here because we have a partner in the Delta Hotel who's come to us multiple times and said, what are we going to do together to make this work? And it's a facility that's at its age and condition where we do need to make a decision about what is our future commitment to this property, because otherwise we're just going to continue kind of filling it up with a lot of, moderately priced, opportunities, but not taking it to the next level. So I think the key here is, frankly, is Randy. Randy has come to us, wants to partner with us, and he's committed he's done a lot of financial commitments in working with us and getting the study done. He's paid for additional studies that we've also had an opportunity to look at. So I think it's just the timing of the partnership.
Mayor,
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I also appreciate your explanation about how it contributes to our downtown economy, because that has been the little that I do know about and understand about Convention Center is that exactly what you said. They don't really generate a lot of revenue for the city, but it's what it generates for that active economy downtown. And so I do understand that's a little different. The analysis really isn't the revenue that the convention center that itself generates. So I appreciate that. And I had a question, but I lost my train of thought. So I'll go turn it over to somebody else.
So, Andrea, if you want to answer the question, if we improve the facility, about the revenue, the experiences there, can you share that again?
Sure, Mayor. In terms of what our target is to double the higher end bookings that we're seeing in there. So we're seeing some drop off now because we're not competitive in this market. We don't have enough amenities. And while the convention center booking is full, our calendar is full of events. They're those lower revenue events that aren't driving hotel business, they're not driving restaurant business, they're not driving as much on food and beverage and AV services associated with those meetings. Bring in the higher end events. What we're trying to do is double those events so that those higher end crossover benefits happen. There are more rooms in the hotel. The higher end client that comes in for those business meetings, for those trade shows, and the experience of being in the downtown environment. It's those types of events that we want to increase with these investments.
Good, thank you. Ms. Duff?
Yeah, first of all, I know we haven't had time to completely look at the study, but there were a few key pages that I just wanted to point out that on page number 17 is an executive summary, has different scenarios and associated estimated costs and what the ROI is. So I think that's good to look at. And also the point of we're at this property, we're like, do something or don't do something. And Randy is feeling this way about his hotel, like, are we doing something or am I getting out of this because this isn't, a good investment for me? And I think we're at that same point with this. We've got to move forward, or maybe I think if we don't believe in having this kind of space here, is then piece it off for other kind of development. I think it adds to the synergy that we need for the downtown and economic development and building a business and workforce related, especially in the technology fields. So I believe in it, and I think we should, but doing nothing is not a good strategy. I don't think it's good strategy for the hotel. Randy has expressed that to me a number of times. How long, do I keep on putting money into this hotel? And, or are we moving forward? And I think we are that also, because we have a lot of frustration in being able to get the better events at our convention center and the deteriorating quality of the building and the amenities and the facilities, including the Mesa Amphitheater. So I think this is a great opportunity we're looking at downtown completely in so many different realms, pushing it to the next phase. And as part of our placemaking, who is Mesa? What is Mesa's about? And what we're doing in downtown Mesa as far as being in the new digital age, the Gen Y and Z experiences and event space for the amphitheater and things like that. We're moving into that. And I think it's a good image for Mesa and what we're about and how we're moving forward. We've done a lot of economic development across the city in this new economy. And I think this is a way to move our downtown in and have downtown be more than just recreation or entertainment. It is also participating in this new creative economy. On page 75 of the study are industry trends. It kind of looks at the different kinds of uses of facilities and, and what the demands are. And there's a market and demand program, a section in there. I think that's really interesting. Like I said, I haven't read every single page, but I've flipped through every single page and think those are answering some of the questions that we have. As far as hotels, they're in the future visioning of what downtown could be, and not this is a complete solution, but there was the concept of maybe in the Drew lot, we have a big parking lot there, to do a boutique hotel, build over the parking lot, not lose our parking, Julie, but build over the hotel, kind of like we did with Eco Mesa, but that would be more specialty, and that's just a visioning. There is nothing concrete around that, but there are ideas floating around how we could add hotel rooms as we can justify, but as we know right now, we can't support the one we have, so we're not even moving in those directions. That's all I had. Thanks.
Well, very good. We've had a good hour discussion on this. It's informative. And I'd just like to wrap up a couple things because I just recently returned from Austin, the South by Southwest conference there. And, I've used this word, it has a really good vibe because of the synergy in the core area there. Ironically, we were told that they're tearing down their convention center this week, starting with a 3-year build for a new convention center. It's only 22 years old. So, I look at our convention. I don't remember when ours was built, but it's dated, I would say. And I think that, we're a unique area in downtown Mesa with an amphitheater. Not many venues have an amphitheater for outdoor concerts. And I think people enjoy that. I enjoy that. And then the experiences that surround South by Southwest, having gone there only one time, is phenomenal, as you know. So I know we won't have the same experiences as that venue conference, but the whole goal is to bring people to your downtown core area, get to your hotel beds. You know, I'm amazed that your hotel's not filled up all the time, Randy, but, you know, maybe we can work towards that. But I think there's some constraints here. We have a great piece of property, but we have surrounding parcels like the Mesa Community College building to the southeast of you that, you know, could use a facelift, but there's a great city parking garage there that we can utilize. And then, you know, there's the buildings and parking lot Ms. Spilsbury talked about to the east and north of you. There's some outdated office space buildings there too that, do we own those now? The buildings there by Save the Family?
County, but it's directly north of the property.
Yeah, county still owns that?
No, we do.
We do, okay. So we're a partner all around the Delta is what I'm getting at, and so there's space to grow. I think my last comment is I think when we're investing in Mesa, we're investing in our legacy. And so I continue to do that. So I appreciate the survey, all the outreach that's done, because I think people will criticize us too. Why is the city spending money to do a convention center? You know, let somebody else do it. You know, we don't want to carry that taxing burden. And so, you know, that's something that the council will have to weigh into once we get into the numbers. But I think I'm all about investing in Mesa, helping our downtown businesses and other businesses grow. Especially we have an educational component here with ASU Mix downtown, and we can always work harder. And I think it's time to move forward with that too, Mr. Brady. And then was there any follow-up on the financial part of it? I mean, you touched on it a little bit.
I think we'll come back. We need to come back and have that discussion with the council.
Okay, yeah. All right, with that, if I don't see any other questions, then
One more question.
Mayor?
I don't, oh,
there's the voice of Adams.
Adams?
Go ahead.
I don't want to take much time on this, but what I'm curious about, maybe this is a question for Andrea. We're looking to upgrade our convention business, both in terms of content and attendee numbers, I think. So my question is, with the facility as envisioned, what would be the maximum number of attendees, maybe maximum number of exhibitors that normally come along with these type of conventions? So are we looking at 1,000 attendees, 1,500, 2,000? And then how do those numbers relate to the hotel capacity? And would we be able to theoretically achieve the room night goals that the Delta would need to continue to be financially viable? And if that's a lot of detail and it's in the report, just tell me that, and I'll either look it up, or this can be some information you come back to us later with when we talk about the numbers here. But I'm just curious, what do our numbers show there? Because I should know this, but I don't know how large a convention we can host. So I'll wait for those answers later, but I wanted to throw them out before I forgot. Thank you.
We'll get back.
I'm hearing we'll get back to you, Councilmember Adams. All right, with that, we'll wrap up this part of 1A, and thank you very much. We'll move over to 1B.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, council members.
1B is a presentation discussion for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development 2025 to 2029 5-year consolidated plan and City of Mesa annual action plan for fiscal year 25-26. We have Eric, Grace, and Michelle is probably out sick. I think she was alluding to that. Thank you, gentlemen. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor Freeman, Vice Mayor Summers, Member of Council. I'm Justin Boyd, Housing and Community Development Administrator. Thank you for having us here with you this morning. We have been working on our 2025-2029 5-year consolidated plan for quite some time now in collaboration with Civitas. So today I have Eric Chipman and Grace Orr with me, who will be providing an overview of those plans. Eric?
Thank you, Justin. Good morning, Mayor and council members. Pleasure to be with you. I know you have several items still on your agenda this morning, so we'll be a little bit more brief and probably a little less exciting than the previous presentation. A little bit of background on why we're here. The city has for decades now received annual entitlement grants through HUD. These are grants that are part of the annual federal budget. They're not necessarily competitive grants that we're applying for. We receive these annually through HUD. There's 3 grants that we receive. I'm going to go over those briefly in a moment. But essentially, HUD requires us to take a pause in these programs every 5 years and reassess and reestablish our priorities and goals for using those funds for the next 5 years. So we're going to go over each of these 3 programs briefly. So the Community Development Block Grant is your largest grant. You've been receiving this for decades. This is a 50-year-old grant program now. Mesa likely has been receiving those since inception. We can use these funds for, again, most flexible here of the 3, public improvements, so community centers, rec centers, senior centers, as well as other infrastructure, sidewalk improvements, ADA accessibility, et cetera. City can use these for housing rehabilitation. Unfortunately, we can't use them to help develop new construction of housing, but we can use them for acquisition and renovation. And the city has owner-occupied housing rehab program as well through that program. We can use these funds to help small businesses or even larger for-profit businesses expand through economic development and incentives that way. Funds can be used, as the mayor alluded to a moment ago, about potentially acquiring underutilized properties for redevelopment of a future eligible use. And we can set aside up to 15% of our funds for public services. So this is a variety of social services. And this is where I believe council members may be familiar, where you provide grants to many nonprofits to run different social service type programs. The second grant, the Home Investment Partnership Program, as the name sort of indicates, this is all things housing. So we do use these funds for housing rehabilitation, but also this is our largest source for new construction. So the city puts out RFPs from time to time as funds are available to solicit proposals for development. Typically, we don't have enough funding to fully fund a development, so we're typically one source of funds in a larger development project, maybe that they have funding from state housing or other sources, and we're just subsidizing a few of the units. The final grant is our most restrictive, is the Emergency Solutions Grant. This is to address homelessness. We can use this for prevention, helping people avoid eviction in the first place. Emergency shelters, so operations of our homeless shelters. Street outreach, sending case managers into the street to help refer clients there. And then rapid rehousing for those that might be in a shelter or homeless, helping them get stably rehoused with rental assistance. So the consolidated plan that I know you have a draft and it's going out for public comment at the end of the month. 5 major components: the needs assessment and the market analysis is largely where my team assisted with housing and demographic analysis. I'll point out here that this is a very prescribed document as you're looking through some of the data sets or required data sets, the narrative prompts, if you will, throughout the plan are prescribed by HUD. So we don't have a whole lot of flexibility in what this report looks like. It's not intended to be a replacement for a larger housing market study or housing needs assessment. To that extent, we've looked at recent other city conducted assessments and market studies, other priority and vision comprehensive plans, strategic plans, et cetera, that the city has to complement this work. With that, staff has conducted numerous public hearings, as well as online surveys, direct surveys as well, and working with other departments to get feedback and citizen participation. So we take all of that information, develop the 5-year strategic plan, which is where we identify the priorities and goals for using these funds for the next 5 years. I'll show you our recommendations for those momentarily. And then I believe you're probably familiar with the annual action plan, which is essentially the budget for that particular year's funding. And I believe you may have recently approved that budget for the upcoming action plan. So here's the 2024 funding allocation. As you're probably well aware, the president just signed the continuing resolution for the 2025 last week. It did level fund all of these programs. So while it might not literally be to that dollar, we're expecting essentially the same amount for our cycle that starts here in July 1st. So I've kind of gone through that process. We've been working on this plan since last fall. It'll be out for public comment essentially the entire month of April, at which point we'll take any feedback that we have, finalize the plan, and get it submitted to HUD for their acceptance and a release of those funds as of July 1st. Just some quick highlights of the community survey results here. We had these options for the highest and best uses of the CDBG funds. These were weighted responses, so the respondents were asked to rank these in highest to lowest. So you can see at the bottom of your screen there, affordable housing and then supportive services were overwhelmingly our top two priorities for using these funds. And a little bit breakdown, more nuance there of how the respondents provided more detail, if you will, for affordable housing, just strictly more affordable housing, new affordable housing, and then senior or bridge housing. So we're identifying that we're lacking senior options. We've got a lot of older homeowners that may not be desiring to stay in that home that they may have been in for the last 30, 40 years. They're looking to transition to some sort of more appropriate senior housing, and that we're missing that option, as well as what we refer to as bridge housing or transitional housing for folks that may have been homeless or have other subsidy housing to help them bridge to traditional housing. Under the public services, homeless services, mental health, and programs for neglected and abused children were the top ranking. Economic development with job creation and retention, small business assistance, and then public improvements, the top priorities there were general neighborhood cleanup, street improvements, and the water and sewer improvements. So again, that was just, the survey results were from stakeholder organizations and residents, but with that, as well as the data we've collected, interviews with other stakeholders and departments, what staff know is ongoing and successful programs and other visions for the city, we've developed these priorities and goals. So they generally align with the public feedback, but just want to be clear that that's not the only thing that drove these priorities. So these are not, again, not necessarily in rank order either. So primarily for your CDBG funds, the public facilities and infrastructure would be your top priority, followed by public services. And then a combination of CDBG and the home funds, you'd be affordable housing with rehabilitation, again, owner and renter occupied housing, new development of affordable housing with the home funds, and then tenant-based rental assistance also with our home and ESG funds. Then the homeless strategies, primarily using the ESG funds, the emergency shelter services to make sure that we have shelter operations throughout the year, and then rapid rehousing and homeless prevention activities. And then the city, of course, takes a portion of each of these grants for effective administration. And so, of course, we have to have a goal for that to meet HUD's guidelines for how this program's set up. All the funds have to go towards a goal, so our administrative dollars are addressed there. So I'll go through.
Quick question
Yes, sir.
for you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Vice Mayor.
I might as well just address this really quickly since we're on the slide. So when you look at slide 7, the community survey highlights top priority needs. Number 3 is economic development.
Yes, sir.
Then you go to the next slide that I don't see economic development here. So if it's a community priority, why aren't we at least including it in our priorities and needs?
Yeah, so city looking at other funds that you potentially have available for economic development, other initiatives that you might have, and quite frankly, with CDBG funds, economic development is actually the hardest program to accomplish and meet those requirements. It's overwhelmingly nationwide is the #1 type of program that requires repayment for ineligible use or not meeting, you may be familiar with the term national objective, but not meeting the ultimate criteria for those activities.
It's overwhelmingly difficult.
Yeah.
We explored a few options on that, and we've declined to pursue it.
It's not only burdensome on the city, but for those receiving the funds, tracking the jobs and where the individuals, where the demographics, where they're coming from, it's just nearly impossible.
I understand that. My comment would be is I'd at least like to leave the option open. If it's still an option, I don't have any problem with that. I agree if we can use other sources, that's what we'll do. And we have an incredible demand for housing and some of these other homeless strategies right now that would probably top that at the moment. But I'd at least like us to keep that pathway open.
Yes,
I
sir.
think through our economic development department and our education, we're doing tons
Yeah,
of
so
workforce development
workforce
stuff.
is a lot easier to focus it that way. But
Right.
on job creation, I just would never recommend taking federal funds for those kind of programs, especially since we have a allocation of general fund dollars to have strategies to support the economic development of the city. We don't have in the general fund as many dollars for affordable housing and low-income public services. So it just kind of identifies that, hey, we already have a commitment over here, but we don't use the general fund dollars to do affordable housing and vouchers and, emergency shelter like we would over on the federal side.
And I think that's fair. It's just, if it's a community priority, having a pathway open. I don't disagree with anything said. Thanks.
I'll add a slight nuance as well. Under public services, you can fund generalized job training or job readiness type programs. That's actually under public services from HUD's perspective. Economic development is, quite frankly, literally you're giving a loan or a grant to a business for them to expand. And then, as Mr. Brady is pointing out, then those businesses have to track the use of those funds, meet all the federal criteria for using those funds, track jobs, employment rates, et cetera. So,
Yeah, I remember going through that exercise back when we were really trying to get job growth along downtown when
Yes,
we were
sir.
first starting out. So, and clearly it seems that we've shifted away from that toward other sources of revenue that maybe aren't as onerous. All right, fair enough. Thank you.
One more question, Mr. Heredia.
Yes, sir.
I think just to that point, that's a good question. To that point, I think, how do we, I'm thinking the development of Rancho here, affordable housing, you got market commercial at the bottom, or so I wouldn't say commercial, but we use, like Local First used it for like small business, job creation, right?
Yeah.
So there are opportunities when you maybe combining thinking creatively of how you match the affordable housing piece to a commercial economic development potential, right? Where I think they've had some success in some startups, like small startups, that folks have, used that commercial kitchen and those kinds of things. So just like maybe adding some creativity to some of these projects, right? On the economic development. That's a good point. I think it's hard to do just an economic development piece with these types of federal funds, but creatively looking at options like that one came up just in my head right now at the Rancho Affordable Housing Complex. Just how some success we had on incubation and some small business stuff that we've been working there.
And the CPLC project that is under construction right now will have some space for community support and entrepreneurship.
For sure.
I think the physical space, building that out is a lot easier than funding the job
The job
creation.
stuff, yeah.
What we do, and I think the council, we've had these discussions, right? When especially we work with nonprofits that are providing locations for low affordable housing, one of the things we've really tried to work on is having those wraparound services, which would include like workforce development too. So using that to leverage that, I think is important also.
And my other question on, we get these amounts of funds. Do we track any like additional leverage funds that we get? I know for some of these, we might work with a county here. Do we track that information? How, $4 million actually equates to $8 million, or I'm just putting out the number, but is there any tracking of that, leveraging additional funds that we get for these needs that we have, right? Because $4 million does not cover the needs that we have, but I do see over time that we've gotten ability, because we funded, off the streets, and so the county has worked with us and other entities, right? So is that do we track that information?
Mayor Freeman, Councilman Heredia, yes, we do track all that information. Essentially, every contract that we enter into identifies the federal funds that are being leveraged into the project, and also what the nonprofit is bringing to the picture. More specifically with the Home Partnership Program, there's a 25% match requirement for those nonprofits, for those CHODOs, for those developers. So the short answer is yes, we track all funds that the agencies bring to the table to contribute to our federal funds.
Do we highlight those numbers? I don't think I've seen like how, the amounts of those leverage funds, right?
If I may, we're required to report those every year. The city does that annual action plan, which you've just recently approved. But in the fall, we also have to provide a performance report for what was accomplished in the prior year. And in that report, we have to track the matches, as Justin's referencing for the home program, as well as the ESG program also has a 100% match, so dollar for dollar. And then CDBG funds that are leveraged with other city dollars or other local investments. So that's all in the CAPER each year, what occurred. So, yes, sir, absolutely.
That out.
Just highlight that.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes, sir.
helpful, yeah.
Councilman Hood, I could also add, since we've been reviewing the applications for the 25-26 funding process and we've gone around and had those discussions, if you look at the budget page of those agencies' applications, you will see those numbers for yourself as well.
Good. Mr. Adams, Ms. Goforth, anything online?
Yes, Mayor, I'll be brief. I've been doing a crash course in familiarizing myself with how this funding works, and my hat's off to staff. They've provided me some very good background. In fact, I'm also waiting for a 5-year look back to further familiarize myself with our pattern here in allocating these funds. Short comments. I am surprised and disappointed that economic development didn't make the cut line. Echoing Councilmember Summers, Vice Mayor Summers' comments, I saw that and I wondered why. One of the reasons I asked for a 5-year look back to see where we've been and where we're going. I would have a difficult time being supportive of this recommendation if we weren't willing to take a second look at including economic development activities in some of these CDBG allocations. I think it would be appropriate. In fact, I wasn't aware that that was one of the options until I started my self-study course here. So I would be supportive of taking a second look at that for obvious reasons. Honestly, I'm not looking to create additional work for city staff, but I'm having a hard time accepting the reason that there's additional paperwork and reporting requirements and other things like this that would cause us to set aside looking at economic development uses. So that's where I'm at on this right now, looking to gather additional information, but I would be strongly supportive of taking a second look at the CDBG funds and including, at least it's in the top 3, at least a third of the funds being allocated to economic development activities. And those are my comments at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, can I just remind the council, what's hard about it, there's just, it's not just paperwork, right? It's not just a burden on the city, it's a burden on the recipient of those funds, those employers. And it just we've tried it and it just doesn't work very well. And very few cities use that option. What we have done to support economic development is we focus on workforce development, as well as you think about the ARPA dollars we receive, which fell under the HUD kind of oversight, I guess, for lack of a better word. We invested in capital projects, right? We have the restaurant incubator that we've invested in, which will provide a tremendous opportunity for economic development for small businesses. We invested in the studios, right, where economic development hosts the entrepreneur and small business center. So on those physical, Mesa Business Builder, but where we can build those physical facilities, that is a lot easier than kind of going to an employer and providing a grant for them to hire employees in the downtown. It makes it most of them will pass on with the requirement of all the reporting requirements that they have. But we can do something like build out incubator space for small businesses, for restaurants. We've seen a lot of success there. So if that's the intent, we can do that. But I just reminded you just last week went through that whole list of CDBG, and you think about how competitive that is just today on public services and the CDBG. And so that's one of the reasons it has not been included as a priority in the future.
I think it's, I'm sorry.
No, I was waiting for Mayor to look over, but go ahead.
I think it's spreading the peanut butter
Next.
too thin. We have such demands in affordable housing and public services around. It is so great. I don't think we can delve in it. And I'm aware of so many grants that are available through like LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. They're funneled from banks, insurance companies, all kinds of private sector. There's so many grants, Verizon. I can go a long list of grants available for businesses to develop, to grow. There's so many, and there's much less cumbersome than getting involved with the federal government. So there are a lot of resources out there if you're into small business and business development. I would recommend anybody interested in that, look at LISC, or they're a good place to start because they kind of funnel all those money into grant opportunities. But in order to have that present, we don't necessarily have to do it at the city, and then we do provide these other services, including Mesa Business Builder, as far as how we fund through our general fund.
Thank you. Ms. Spilsbury.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment on that. I mean, this is the same situation, right, where if the nonprofit gets the money and they're not successful with the accurate reporting and paperwork, then the city has to then pay that back, right? I mean, we have struggled with this in the past with maybe not.
Paid money back.
Yeah, right, and it puts the city in a really bad position. So let's remind everyone of that as well, that if we already know that this is extremely cumbersome / impossible to do, and that the city, one way around that, has decided to use general fund money. I mean, there is no lack of money being poured into small business assistance and workforce development. Incredible. When I'm out talking in the public, I always bring up our efforts in that because I think we have really made that a priority in our city and spent a lot of resources and time and money, and like you said, the ARPA dollars. So to me, I don't feel concerned at all that economic development is not listed in here because yes, we're hearing from the community that's one of their main priorities, but look at what we're doing. And I would rather do it the way we're doing it than try to do it in a way that's not going to be successful.
Mayor, members of council, I think to articulate a win-win, so to speak, is we are working with Jeff McVeigh's group. He did receive an EDI, Economic Development Initiative grant, which we are presently working on the policies, procedures, and development of that program. We are even working with Eric in collaboration to review some of the direction that we are proposing for that program. So I do want to let you know that we do have an economic development initiative that we will be working with here soon. However, it's not part of this report, as it's a different silo of HUD funding.
And one other point, I was just wanting to check and make sure I was correct, but on our spreadsheet with all of our funding, under the human services, which isn't this, the human services is what we do through the city, but through that money, we have those priorities, and workforce development is one of those priorities. And so in that human services money, there is some money being allocated to the workforce development.
Ms. Goforth, do you have any questions?
Oh, I would just say I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate Mr. Adams raising that, but I too am comfortable with all the efforts the city is doing and on workforce and business development through other areas. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Okay, good. Carry on.
And I know you're trying to wrap up here momentarily, Mayor. So the last few slides are just a recap, which I believe you are familiar with from the action plan. So now that we do have a reasonable budget from HUD, these numbers are probably a little bit more accurate. Again, HUD has 60 days to release the actual allocation for 2025, at which point we'll refine these numbers. But you can see we'll stick with those percentages in each of the funding categories. So there's your CDBG funds for 25, your home allocations, and then your ESG allocations. Again, this is no different than what you saw in your action plan deliberations last week, I believe. And again, so we're just a quick summary there. We've got a 30-day comment period starting on the 31st, running through April. We will consolidate all of those comments that we might receive, as well as your feedback from today. HUD's submission, ideally right there in the middle of May for their acceptance, and then release of the funds as of July 1st.
Okay, very good. Any more questions? Ms. Spilsbury?
Hi, thank you. So the consolidated plan for 25 to 29, is it much different than the previous one? Are there any big changes that I'm not noticing?
I would say there's not substantial changes. The trends, the priority needs are, again, with consideration of how we can actually utilize the funds and the constraints and the strings that come attached. I would say there's not substantial change. We have modified the structure of our priorities and our goals and our setup of our budget to more align with what we now know as HUD's sort of best practices for those structures. But generally speaking, the ideas, the themes are not much changed. If that makes sense.
And my last question was just, so really the point of the consolidated plan is more for priorities and goals than funding mechanism with the uncertainty going forward, right? We make the plan 5 years going forward, and whatever money we end up getting or not getting, it doesn't matter, because that's more about the priorities and the goals. Am I right on that?
Yes, ma'am, exactly. And so you'll see in the strategic plan, HUD requires us to estimate how much we're going to get over the next 5 years so we can sort of tell the public what we expect to put in each of these buckets. Well, that's more uncertain now than it has been in previous plans, but nonetheless, we're just projecting the same amount of funding each year until we have some reason to alter the plan. So if these programs were eliminated or drastically cut, we might have to amend this plan, readdress our priorities, and come back, next year and say, well, with half the funding, our ideas changed, right?
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, seeing or hearing nothing else, I think we're through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. So council, time management wise, some of you have to leave at about 15 minutes. Your preference to move forward with our next item, item 1C, or do we want to wait till another study session?
I know we're already behind a presentation on our redevelopment, so I don't want to be behind 2 presentations, but I have time, but I don't know about everyone else. But I don't think this last one should take that long.
Well, we have 2 that have to leave via the
Okay.
meeting by 10.
Are they here?
Yeah, me.
I mean,
Like, where's
No,
the
the
where
meetings
the
are
meeting?
off-site.
No, the
They have
meetings
to-
are,
they have to
I
travel.
didn't understand.
He's got to go to
I think I
downtown
know
Phoenix.
you're maybe not.
Well, Eric, why don't you come on up? So item 1C is presentation discussion on Extension Road Bike Lane Project. I just don't want to lose quorum, which we won't do that if you have to leave. So we'll be down to 5.
You got 7 minutes.
I can't wait.
I'll catch up after.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Eric Gadarian, the Assistant Transportation Director. Really quickly, I will run through these slides, but I think the reason we're here is because in 2021, as we were talking about Mesa Moves projects, specifically active transportation projects, we were talking about larger dollar CIP projects with that program. As part of the discussion with council, one of the items that we were directed to look at and possibly move forward with was lower cost enhanced bike lanes, where we don't have to really invest a lot of capital in those. So we took that direction. In 2021, we started looking at locations in the city that we could do that. We had one of our senior planners. He went out and with aerials and then also biking. We were really focused on collector streets, not the major arterials in Mesa. We tried to identify locations that some of these enhanced bike lanes could, I'll say, more easily be done. They're not easy to do, but more easily to be done. And those are we shared this map. The green locations were locations that don't really have any on-street parking. They don't have a lot of houses that live or front onto them. And so one of those locations was Extension Road. So we did some public outreach. We really, the focus of the area was Extension Road from Baseline to Broadway. It's the border between Councilmember Heredia and Councilmember Duff's district. So we involved them and they got the word out. We had a public meeting in the spring of 2022 just to get kind of the opinion of Mesa residents on this, because if we're going to enhance the bike lanes on Extension, we are going to have to repurpose some of the asphalt and possibly remove a travel lane to do that. There was There was a lot of approval for this. When we had a survey that was online, we had about 40 people at our public meeting, a lot of approval for it. We went to, internally to staff, we went to a final design concept because we have a maintenance project. We had a maintenance project at that time to do a mill and overlay of Extension Road. If you drive it today, you'll notice it's not the greatest road to drive on in Mesa. That project was put on hold in the winter of 22 and 23 because we had all these fiber companies coming in and they wanted to get in on Extension. So they're finally finished with getting all the fiber in that area. And so we have a mill and overlay project scheduled for 2025. I'll skip over some of these, but why Extension? I'll point out just a couple of things. It's a long, continuous stretch that especially the two arterials on either side of Extension, Alma School and Country Club, they both don't have bike lanes. We don't foresee being able to put bike lanes on those two facilities anytime in the near future. So our choice was to focus on Extension. It also has a lot of activity centers that are near Extension. You know, we have the Fiesta District that touches it. We have two schools. We have Kleinman Park. We have the Fiesta Sports Complex. And we chose to finally take the project all the way to Main Street to tie into Main Street and the light rail. We looked at a bunch of different concepts to see what would work best. And these, I'll say, these were all separated bike lanes. So there's some sort of, we're going to use delineators, some sort of delineation between the bike lane and the travel lanes. To do that, Extension today is a 4-lane collector street with a center turn lane. We did a lot of analysis and we feel comfortable that we could take a northbound travel lane away and Extension would still operate fine. I think it goes back to this map really, I went the wrong way, sorry. This map really quick, a lot of the activity areas are on the west side of Extension and those are the southbound lanes. There's a lot of queuing to get into Ida Redbird Elementary. There's some queuing in other locations that we need the 2 lanes in the southbound direction, but possibly, or that we can take one in the northbound direction and things will still work. We have done traffic analysis internal to our department to look at this option. It does still work. There's not a lot more delay with this than there is out there today. Not surprisingly, the most delay is around the school and then also at Southern Avenue. We do have about 14,000 vehicles a day on Extension. This is just a high-level overview of what it would look like. We would have an asymmetrical street. We'd have 2 southbound lanes, 1 northbound lane. We'd continue to have the center turn lane. We need that center turn lane for left turns into the school and at intersections. An additional concept, and you'll see this on the north end and south end, but we can also look at it for the entire stretch, is just doing buffered bike lanes, so no delineators, keeping the 4 lanes of travel, narrowing them down to 10 feet, and then we'd have an 18-inch striped buffer between the travel lanes and the bike lane.
Is there anything raised on that at all?
There would not be anything
There's
raised.
nothing,
Yeah, so.
not even like bumps or anything like that? I don't know, that's probably not the technical term.
Well, yes, and I think part of that is maintenance reasons. Our smallest sweeper that we have, we need 8 feet of horizontal clearance to be able to clean the street. If you're not able to get in there, these bike lanes tend to collect a lot of debris. And so because we wouldn't have that 8 feet just with the buffer, we couldn't do any sort of vertical separation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted, here's a couple photos just to kind of highlight what the difference between what a separated bike lane looks like and a buffered bike lane. This is the entire 2.5 mile stretch that we have. Just because of the railroad on the north side between Broadway and Main Street, and then a lot of the driveways south towards Baseline, we need to do buffered bike lanes there. We would then transition into these separated bike lanes for the majority of the section where all the activity centers are. As I mentioned, we do have a mill and overlay project starting in April of 2025. We just want to get final council direction on what to do. So if we choose to move forward, we can order the materials. The mill and overlay project will last about 2 months, and then all the striping and everything else will occur afterwards. So hopefully I'm kind of made it in time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You know, you did make it in time, but if they have to leave, they can leave.
Understood.
And
I'm happy to follow up if you have any comments.
Sure.
Please reach out.
you're really good. Vice Mayor, did you want to go first?
Yeah, if I may ask you a real quick question. Is there bus traffic on this road? Is this a route?
There's no fixed route. And I talked to Jody yesterday, just asking about the buzz, the Fiesta buzz, and it doesn't make it this far to the east. So no, there's no
bus
transit.
route. All right, because my concern was going to be the northbound traffic being down to one lane, being behind a bus, and whether it. So that's a moot point.
Yeah, we try to look at all of this beforehand.
I'm interested to see how this progresses, because there's at least one street I can think of in my district that needs to be completed, and we want to do that in a way that I think is both multimodal, but also, given its location, is sensitive to trying to dissuade heavy truck traffic, industrial truck traffic. So this could serve as a template for that.
Sure.
We can talk about that. Yeah, and it's access to the school, exactly. So
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Mr. Reddy?
I think, Eric, you mentioned capacity. What's the most capacity on extension that they could take? You said 14,000 is the current capacity? Or
So 14,000 is the existing counts that we have.
Yeah.
And that's the section right around Southern. The consultant last week, when talking about going down to two-lane streets can definitely handle up to 10,000. I think in my experience, I would say up to 12,000. But I think we've seen more traffic in the southbound direction. That's why we chose to reutilize one of the northbound lanes instead of southbound.
And Eric, isn't there something about the number of bike lanes going east and west and the kind of lack of the north and south this will help out with, or is that not true? Are we pretty well balanced? It just seems like there's always been a push to get more north-south.
Yeah, so I think one of the other things is Extension doesn't have a interchange on it, and there's a bridge across the 60 to kind of create that low-stress route. The red lines on this map and blue, so the red lines are existing bike lanes that we have. So there are bike lanes on Extension, and it would connect east-west to a lot of streets. I think, Extension is heavily used by cyclists today because there are no bike lanes on Alma School and on Country Club. So it does provide, and it'll provide those east-west connections that are lower stress also.
So the bike lanes currently there aren't buffered at all?
They are not. They're just our traditional 5.5-foot bike lane.
Yeah, just a last comment. I think it's interesting to kind of see the effects of these collector streets. I think we have something that maybe we can pilot with Extension and see like the interest and also utilization for the future. That's why I'm supportive of this and looking at these collector streets as a potential of adding bike lanes in these areas that could be utilized, right? So Extension is a prime opportunity to learn about these collector streets and how we can, of course, each one is different as you get along to the east side, right? But you look at Longmore, you look at what is the other? As you get along further, both east and west, right? So the only thing, my piece on, I like the design, just the buffered piece. I understand why, but just how it's still, next to a car. And so that's the problematic, how do we re-envision some of these these opportunities to add bike lanes that are more safe, like than just on the street, right? And so I think I've shared, there's examples out there where there's like large sidewalks, where it's for walking and then for bikes, right? That like I've seen in the valley. And so just the creativity of in the future, how do we add bike lanes that are safer, not just like adding a buffered lane on the street?
Sure.
So.
I think, Southern Avenue is a perfect example that we widen the sidewalks on Southern Avenue so we could have the multimodal aspect up. Yeah, those projects unfortunately just are costly to do. So, we're looking at, I failed to mention that, we'd be doing all of this with operational dollars. This is not a CIP project. We're looking at adding on to an existing maintenance project that's there.
Sure. All right.
Thank you. You're off to your meeting. Ms. Pillsbury?
I just had a question about the delineators. On slide 14, they're spaced out quite far. And then on that, the 2 over, I don't even know where that is exactly. But on slide 16, they're like, right next to each other. What's the thought of delineators and how far apart they're spaced? Because I don't love the look of like the do.
And
So,
yes, and this is not in Mesa,
okay,
these
that's what I was thinking.
delineators here.
Is this Tempe?
This is, I believe, in Tempe.
Because they're doing that all over the place.
This was a filler picture, sorry.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
But it's great. A good question. I think so. We're looking on extension to have a spacing of 20 feet, and then where there are driveways and streets, we'll obviously pull back. So
So they would be the more spaced out
they'll be
ones.
spaced out. We want them to be spaced closely enough that a car can't
Direct
swerve in without hitting one to know that they're doing something like that. But yeah, we understand that they're hard to quite honestly hard to maintain. So we don't want more out there than we need to have.
Okay, and the point of the delineator is that it makes the bicyclists feel safer. And it actually is safer, I
feel
guess, if a
safer,
bike
so-
can't. I mean, a
Yes.
car could plow over it, but.
And so with our proposal, the bike lane will also be wider.
Okay.
And then there is a vertical element that if you're not paying attention and you start to drift in your vehicle, you're not just drifting over a stripe.
Okay.
Which some people will start to see and correct themselves. But there is a bump. These bases are they're not going to kick you back into the lane, but you're going to notice that you're going to go up on them. Yes.
So there's no way to put even like the little, what do they call them, that where you hear it if you start going
Oh,
over?
the rumble strips?
Yeah, rumble strips.
Yeah, it's absolutely something we can do. We don't use rumble strips in urban areas
Well, I
because
know.
of the noise
I just
that
was
they
thinking
make.
what else could, because I just don't love the look of delineators.
I understand.
And if we can't put like the little curbing or the bumps or whatever you call them, that also helps you know not to go over there. I don't know. I just wondered what other options we are, which we have. But.
I look at delineators, they're a lot like speed humps. Nobody loves speed humps, but speed humps are the most cost-effective way to slow traffic down.
Okay.
Delineators are the most cost-effective way to separate traffic.
I can handle it if they're every 20 feet or so, I guess.
And I also think about children. If a child is on a bike, what kind of barrier do we have? And I think some of those rumble strips or whatever, someone can be distracted and just go over, whereas the delineator would wake them up and say, okay. Because we are connecting parks and schools all the way up. And I think it's a great pilot program that we can then look at other collector streets we've identified that don't really have that much traffic, but they're especially connecting for schools and public spaces. One of our priorities in our multimodal transportation, micromobility, is in connected networks, and it has been brought up. We've covered this a few years ago, but I've been reminded of that looking at this eventually going all the way up to the stadium connector because it'll extend up to more schools, Westwood High School particularly, and then up to the stadium connector. And then we have that connected route and being able to go east-west in our city in a protected way, but also have an option to go north-south to like the Fiesta area and schools and such like that. So beyond, I know I pushed to get us to Main Street hard, so we have the light rail connection because a lot of people want a protected way to get to the light rail. But eventually, maybe on the phase 2, looking at bringing that up to the stadium connector, and then we can have a connected pathway.
So Mayor, Councilmember, staff reminds me of that request occasionally, so it is on our mind and we'll continue to look at it.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Goforth, Mr. Adams, you're on deck.
Hi, yeah, thank you. This is timely. I just met with a constituent a couple days ago and was asked about this project in particular. He's part of a biking group and they wondered where this went and what was happening. So hi, Tony, I'm sure you're watching. So I'm glad this has come up. Jen, I think you addressed his email to us. Is that what you were talking about extending? Yeah. You know, I don't bike this and frankly, I don't drive it much either. So I rely on the people that do. And I have several constituents that are avid bikers and bike all over the city. And so I'll be anxious to get their feedback on this presentation. But I am certainly for, as everyone knows, safer routes for bikes and pedestrians. And I know the delineators may not look the best, but if our priority is safety, then, you know, sometimes we have to give a little on maybe aesthetics. And I think our priority should be safety, not just for the cars and the people, but the people and the bikes that are using the streets as well. So I think I appreciate the presentation and I support Eric, what you all have done and what you're proposing. And all I would say is you know, ASAP, as soon as possible. Thanks.
I'll definitely go for that, Alicia. I think it's a long time coming, and I know we've had many delays, so thank you. As far as completing the route, I know there used to be, I don't know how funds are now, safe routes to school grants, because if we could take it up to Westwood, especially most schools are complaining of the drop-off thing, so we can get some students who feel safe to bike to school. That would really help. I don't know if there's any funds in that, so we'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I can be supportive of this. I think that I don't know that I feel strongly one way or another about the delineator pylons or not. But if I look at it from a standpoint, if we're trying to encourage perhaps more people in general to use bike lanes or people to ride with their families, younger children, I can see where that would be a level of comfort for folks to have that barrier there to, as I think someone mentioned, so that a child might not stray out of the bike lane is easy. So I think it's a good street to try it. Go ahead and put it in place and take a look back and see if it's achieved the objectives we're trying to achieve. So I have no objections to what's been proposed and would defer to those who are more into the street cycling community as to whether we have the delineators or not. I tend to ride more off the road, so no personal experience or preference one way or another, but I'd be supportive of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll just finish up. I know we have a Fire Station 204 down south, as long as it doesn't encumber our public safety response. Of course, that's what our residents expect and businesses. On First Avenue, being there recently, industrial and commercial use on First Ave, a lot of semi-trucks. You got ABC Roofing, Corrosion Engineering, 3 mobile home parks, a lot of commercial traffic, recycling. Just keep that in mind. There's a lot of businesses there that have a lot of large semi-truck there. So if you're doing some more maybe reach out to some of the businesses and ask them, what do you envision? Will this project hinder you? I just want everybody to be safe.
We appreciate that, Mayor. So once we get to Broadway Road and north of Broadway Road, we will be going to just the buffers. There won't be the delineators.
Okay.
Part of that has to do with the railroad crossing. We can't have an asymmetric road with the railroad crossing. And so I think, that we really have tried to look at that. And we understand once we get north of Broadway, the feel of extension changes quite a bit. So
Yeah, you have some probably grade issues there up to the railroad tracks and back, and
well, the street, if you can ride on the street, you'll be fine. But yes, we understand there's some, with the heavy industry there, they use the road differently than the residential and school uses.
So it's just buffered between,
So you-
so it's just paint.
It's just
Yeah.
paint
between
between Broadway and Main.
So
Okay,
the
good.
street use won't alter.
okay. All right, well, very good.
Could
Thank you.
sorry, Mayor, could I ask a question?
Sure.
So between Broadway and Main, we say that the traffic is different, meaning what? Is it heavier, more vehicles, just the types of traffic are different because now it's more trucks? Eric, can you answer that?
Yeah, sure. Mayor, Councilmember Goforth. Yeah, with the land use being more industrial, there's more heavy vehicles there. There are occasionally heavy vehicles parked on the side of the road. I won't say whether that's legal or illegal, but the realist, they're there. And so we didn't feel that it was appropriate to continue the separated bike lane with delineators north. And with the railroad, right between Broadway and Main Street, we couldn't shift traffic over like we needed to because of the asymmetry of the roadway, and have the gate arms be in the appropriate location. So we just went to the striped buffer.
So I understand the railroad point, but I guess I'm having a hard time with your thinking seems counterintuitive. So as traffic gets more dangerous, we lighten up on the safety of our bikers. That doesn't seem to me, is that what we're saying? So as it gets more dangerous, we ratchet down the safety measures for the bikers.
I don't
think we said that.
I'm not
Pretty sure we didn't say that.
I'm not saying that.
Well, but we're taking away those delineators that we say
it's
are
just
part of, or contribute to higher safety of
Right.
the bikers.
But the use in this area is just dramatically different. It's very industrial. You've got heavy trucks going in and out. We don't want to lose a lane. That's part of the difference too. In the yellow is, right, we're taking a lane, right? So we lose a lane, which we think is more than, we're not going to impact the traffic. But when you get to this section, it's heavy industrial. It's got trucks coming in and out of driveways. And I think we just feel like.
So should we think about maybe the route shifts then? What do we think about that? Like, should we shift off of extension? Jen, do you have thoughts on that?
I think leave it as is, as recommended. The biggest thing that we had to work around is the railroad crossing. That's the huge obstacle in having the protected lane because it's so complicated, and to get around that is just not doable. To veer off of that, we'd have to look into going to residential, whatever. People will go ahead and go straight. They just want the most direct route, especially getting up to the light rail and schools. So, I mean, paint is easily changed. I think we start from the recommendation, and I don't know. I'm just concerned about how we work around the railroad. The railroad does run east-west, so, at some point you're going to hit the railroad, even in residential.
It doesn't even look like there's another street that goes through though, besides Country Club and Alma School.
There are not a lot of through streets across the railroad. And so I think for the goals of this project to be a low cost, relatively quickly, it's only taken us 3 years to get the project implemented. This is what we can do. If we need to look at it in the future, it's going to take some infrastructure changes, curb changes to be able to provide a more separated bike lane north of Broadway.
Yeah, I mean, that recycling center alone, right, just south of the railroad tracks is that's a challenge even in a car sometimes, just with the traffic coming in and out of that recycling center there, dropping off the metals and everything else, so.
I'd be curious what bikers do right now, you know, whether they continue up on Extension past all that, or if they already are taking a different route. I'd be curious to find that out, which I'll be able to do after this call. But I certainly don't want to delay this anymore. That's for sure. So, you know, but I guess I would like us to maybe change our mindset a little bit, you know, when it comes to these projects. And, you know, I know it's a balance, right? Absolutely. It's a balance between the businesses, the cars, the trucks, and the bikers and pedestrians. So, but as things get more dangerous for people that aren't in a car, it doesn't make sense to me that we decrease the safety. I understand this is a balancing act in between this section, for sure. But I think that the mindset maybe needs to shift a little bit for us when it comes to bike infrastructure and the safety of every user of the roadway. Thank you.
Good points. Eric, could we put buttons along the, no?
The buttons aren't technically something that
It's just,
we can use between travel lanes, between a bike lane and a travel.
oh, okay. I didn't know if there was some intermediate barrier that kind of wakes you up to that you're crossing over the lane.
Excuse me, and once again, we have to have the width to be able to clean it out so it doesn't just collect debris and dirt.
Can we get a smaller street sweeper?
Well, think about this area again. I know I'm going to keep going back. This has bigger vehicles driving on it, right? I think it's not just, we're taking out a lane in the yellow, we're maintaining the lanes in the blue, which I think we need to do with the size of vehicles and trucks that are going up and down there, yet still providing an opportunity for bikes to go up. Again, this is an operations proposal. This is not a capital improvement proposal. So we're trying to time this. We need to get direction today or in the next couple of weeks because we're scheduling all of the asphalt work to start this spring and summer. And so the proposal is on slide, what is that? Yeah, 15?
Well, yeah, that's from Broadway.
Broadway, to
south.
show the blue being the, what method is that?
The buffered bike lanes where we're going to narrow the lanes to 10 feet and we'll have an 18-inch striped buffer between the bike lane.
Right. And the yellow is the separated with the vertical.
Correct.
buffers.
I like it as is, just to get
oh,
started.
sorry.
Go ahead, Alicia.
I was just going to say, I'm absolutely, let's, you know, I support this and I appreciate, Eric, you and your team, you know, going forward with something that is faster and less expensive, not a capital project, but is an operational funded project. I think we can do a lot more of these and we can do them quickly. And so I'd like to see us start to do that. So let's, I certainly support this.
Mr. Adams, did you have a question? Comment?
No, Mayor, no further comments or questions. Thank you.
Eric, I think you have direction to move forward, and this would be a good template to see how it moves forward within our city.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. So with that, item 2 is acknowledge the receipt of minutes from the prior, that'd be Human Relations Advisory Board, Housing and Community Development Advisory Board, and Parks and Rec Advisory Board meetings. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Adams and Ms. Duff. Motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Next is the current events and conferences attended. Council members, have you been anywhere this past week?
I just wanted to say that I attended the celebration of life for RJ Zeter, our transportation director who passed away from cancer. And I wanted to especially thank Eric for his comments and what a great job he did. I saw you wore a tie today, Eric. Your words you spoke were so beautiful, and it was so neat to see so many of our city staff there. The room was just filled with City of Mesa people, and you could just tell how loved he was and what an impact he had. I'm trying not to cry. And I love that Eric shared one of his mottos was to always round up. And thought that was really beautiful. I'm going to think about that a lot. And we wanted to just give condolences to RJ's family, his wife Danielle, who had surgery yesterday for her own breast cancer, Bobby and Jack and their extended family. And our prayers are with them. And then just save the date. 1 month from today, from yesterday, is our annual spring breakfast that I do the Saturday before Easter. That's at Greenfield Park, Saturday, April 19th from 8 to 10. And we'll have our firefighters there cooking breakfast, bounce houses, petting zoo, arts and crafts, Easter bunny, Easter egg hunt, all the good things. So thanks.
I'm very sorry to miss the funeral. I heard a lot about it, and certainly will miss RJ and wish his wife the best in her journey. During that time, I was at the MAG Regional Human Services Strategic Planning Retreat over in Phoenix, and reorganizing the committees and consolidating them. That we have a overarching committee over human services and domestic violence, and there was one other, and then have action committees. And so it's going to be much more efficient. So we've been working on that for a while, and it was the convening of making that official, and did some strategic planning with that. Natalie Lewis was a facilitator in the group that I was in on the breakout. And so it was nice to have her input on human services and how we could be more efficient. So, and also yesterday I attended Mesa PD had a community event at Escobedo at the Verde Vista apartments up here in Escobedo area. And they brought out their SWAT truck and motorcycles and had games and events and books for the kids to do, and it was well received and well attended. And I appreciate all the community action officers and crime prevention officers and all the support, and the officers themselves out there engaging with the public. It was a good event. Thank you.
Ms. Goforth, Mr. Adams, anything from you?
In the interest of time, Mayor, no, I have nothing to report.
I would like to just add a real quick thank you, Julie, for attending RJ's celebration, and certainly condolences to his wife and his entire family. I attended the New Frontiers for Lifelong Learning spring session this week. They have different classes on all kinds of subjects, and this spring session is all things Mesa. And I just wanted to thank John Zalanka for all his work on this. And then the Parks and Rec, Community Services, and the MAC represented staff members that were there and presented to a pretty packed room. So they learned all about those three areas of the city of Mesa, and they were very interested in it, and it was well received. So thank you to everybody involved in that.
All right, great, thank you. I'll just finish up. I had a tour of the Virgin Galactic facility at Mesa Gateway Airport, and this week they're going to bring in the components for the Delta spaceship and put them together there, and it's phenomenal. So if you have a chance to go out there, and then the mothership, that's the name, will come into Mesa and pick up the aircraft and take it back to New Mexico, and then for $600,000 you can go into space for 90 minutes. So if you want to do that, it's not unlimited. I mean, it's just a one-time event. So, but it's phenomenal how Virgin Galactic is growing out there. I had an opportunity to go to the Mesa Hive grand opening with Chairman Galvin over at the Child Crisis Center. So it's a group, nonprofit, helping low-income families navigate the digital divide. And even older senior people, one person sent her first email at 90 years old. Have never got on email, so that was pretty phenomenal. Councilmember Spilsbury and Vice Mayor Summers, we attended the play ball event. I'm surprised you didn't say that.
Well, I forgot something else too.
Okay, so in collaboration with the Major League Baseball and U.S. Conference of Mayors, they had a play ball event at Jefferson Elementary School, and so appreciate staff. Parks were there, and great activity, and it was a wonderful day. I don't think I missed anything. Did you have something you want to add?
Also, it was really funny at the play ball event. I was walking towards the kids and they all started cheering and screaming and yelling. And then I realized Baxter was right behind me from the Diamondbacks. So it wasn't for me, but that was a fun event. I just wanted to mention really quick, last night I was able to attend the Baha'i New Year celebration and the Persian New Year. They had a dinner and a program, and it was really beautiful. And I'm just really grateful for these types of cultural diversity events that we have across our city. And our Baha'i community is a really big asset to the city of Mesa. So I wanted to thank them for having me there.
Oh, great. Thank you. Well, then, Mr. Butler, can you share the schedule of, Mr. Brady? Yeah.
I didn't give any cheat sheets. Just for time, next Thursday is our council strategic planning session.
Oh, yes.
So we'll do that at the Post. We'll send out the agenda today and some of the backup information. So we'll have that for next Thursday at the Post at 7:30.
Okay.
Mr. Brady just wanted to try out a different view here at the podium.
I like it better over there.
Yeah. The only thing that I will add to what Mr. Brady said is on Monday, there'll be a Community and Cultural Development Committee meeting at 10 a.m. on the 24th. And then we'll all spend some good quality time together next Thursday.
Okay. Nothing else? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Spilsbury, thank you. Ms. Duff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll see all of you soon. Thank you.